Hello there, I am the Common Sense Guy and welcome back to my channel. Some people know me better as Jason. How you all doing? Today, as you can tell by the background of this little bit of video and probably by the intro very shortly, we're going to be doing kind of a Brexit story, but it's more of a European Union story and basically the authoritarianism of the European Union and something that really needs to be addressed, and it's not really being picked up on by the mainstream media, and I cannot for the life of me think fucking why. Well, I can, because most media outlets have some form of funding from the EU. Surprising. Shocking. I know. Shocking. So, today we're actually going to be getting into an authoritarian dictatorship telling the rest of other sovereign nations that are part of its political alliance that if you don't follow what we want you to do, we are going to take away your funding.
You will have to judge what is best for you and your family, for your children and grandchildren, for our country, for our future. It will be your decision whether to remain in the EU on the basis of the reforms we secure or whether we leave. Your decision. Nobody else's. Not politicians, not parliaments, not lobby groups, not mine. Just you. You, the British people, will decide. At that moment, you'll hold this country's destiny in your hands. This is a huge decision for our country. Perhaps the biggest we'll make in our lifetimes. And it will be the final decision. So to those who suggest that a decision in the referendum to leave would merely produce another stronger renegotiation and then a second referendum in which Britain could stay, I say, think again. The renegotiation is happening right now, and the referendum that follows will be a once-in-a-generation choice, an in or out referendum. When the British people speak, their voice will be respected, not ignored. If we vote to leave, then we will leave. There'll not be another renegotiation and another referendum.
So, as you can see by the title, European Parliament backs plan to link EU funds to rule of law. Now, before we go any further, let's dissect this magnificent point of the title, shall we? So, the European Union, in its democratically elected wisdom, has decided that if you go against what the European Union has dictated to you, as in your country has elected people that politically disalign with your points of view or with your understanding or with your aspect or ideas of the project that you're trying to build with the European Union, then they can sanction you and take your money away until you bow down to them. This is literally blackmail. This is literally me saying to you, if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to tell everybody you're a pedo. This is basically exactly the same thing, but with money. The fact is that with countries that are smaller net contributors, to the EU, in other words, that they get more money back from the EU than what they put in, this is going to seriously hurt them as a country. Because that's the reason why most smaller countries, especially Eastern European countries, joined up to the EU. Because they needed the extra funding. But this also transcends to the point of even bigger countries, where they will take away your funding, i.e., say for instance, Italy, or Greece with a bailout maybe. If your political points were the point of not aligning with the European Union, they are going to stop giving you money. I just don't understand if people understand this as the way that it is. This is literally an authoritarian dictatorship telling other countries that if you don't do it my way, I'm gonna hurt you. I think I've rambled on about the title long enough on that one, so let's carry on and get through the shit stain of the story, shall we? So, the European Parliament Thursday broadly backed the European Commission's proposal to cut funds to EU countries that do not uphold the rule of law. Now remember, this is upholding the rule of law under the guidance of European Commission's law, or the European Council's idea of law. In other words, saying that if you're a sovereign country, you can't then decide that you want to vote against particular ideas. For instance, using Poland and Hungary, as actual examples here of saying that they don't want to be part of this migration conduct that's going out at this moment in time. They are then going to stop you from receiving funding, because even though that the country has its government elected by a mandate saying that they do not want this, as a sovereign nation, they should be able to implement that if the EU is democratic. But again, those are questions that are more put towards the Remainers, or more put towards the people that are supporters of the European Union project. Please, can any of you that are of that persuasion explain to me how that is democratic? So, setting the stage for a battle among member governments and underscoring geographical divisions within the bloc. In other words, exactly as what I just said, people that have sovereign ideas, or sovereign nations, as they are and should be, are now going to be, should we say, held to the fire, or should we say, well, let's just call it what it is, blackmailed into doing what they want to be, strong-armed, if you will, for a political term, strong-armed into what they, the European Union, want you, as a sovereign nation, to do. The Parliament, the European Commission, voted 397 in favour and 158 against. A report on the proposal, with 69 MEPs abstaining, the Commission's plan has been widely seen as a way to exert pressure on countries such as Hungary and Poland, which have been accused by EU institutions of failing to adhere to the bloc's core values. See what I mean? See how quickly that's devolved into these sovereign countries were elected by a mandate of not allowing certain forms of immigration or open door policies, for instance, and were elected by that, by the demographics of their own country, making the sovereign manifesto of that country opposed, diametrically opposed to what the bloc's core values would be. And by the bloc we mean the European Union. But yet, because that they have had this, and because they have been democratically elected to be different to the rest of the bloc, they are now going to be sanctioned, and majoritively the EU has decided that this is the best way of controlling power, by controlling the money and the funding. Just think on that. Just think on that. That is honestly the definition of blackmail. The notable thing about the mood in the area is the division between those member states where the state of the rule of law has already been questioned. By this, that means that people like in Poland and in Hungary that are against the European Union, into an actual more of a fact, Italy in itself would be diametrically opposed at this moment in time to how the European Union wants to conduct itself over migration, for instance. So this would be a way of being able to sanction those countries, to beat them into submission by taking away their funding and making the citizenry that has voted demographically for their sovereign nation to do what they are doing at this moment in time. Please tell me what you guys honestly think and feel about that. Because me, it makes me sick that people would disguise this form of authoritarian dictatorship, or even, to be honest, I would actually call this totalitarianism. To the point of actually trying to suggest that we know better than what you know. We, the unelected demagoguery, no better than the citizenry of that country and the sovereign parliament of those countries to form a government in those countries. We know better. I find that a scary prospect. I don't know if you guys do as well, but I find that scary, very scary, that people can dictate to you that are not even in your country what you can and cannot do. So the Parliament's co-rapporteur for the report, Petri Savamana, and I'm sorry if I get the name wrong, told Politico following the votes, Saramanama, again sorry about that, a Finnish member of the European People's Party, the EPP, said that it's crucial to understand that this regulation would treat all member states equally. Yes, it would treat all member states equally. You would be equally oppressed by the European Commission and the European courts and the European government to be able to force you into doing something that you don't want to do as a sovereign nation. Democracy is its best! Wait, no, that's not democracy, is it? Parliament's report called for the Chamber to play a greater role in the sanctioning process, but left the majority of the Commission's proposal intact. Amazing. Just amazing. We're just going to carry on. In a debate Wednesday, Eurosceptic MEPs accused the Commission of creating the proposal for the purpose of intervening in domestic politics. Let's just pose a question to people that are Remainers, and hopefully people that are watching this video. What do you think that this proposal of being able to directly affect funding to a country to do with the aspects of what they consider European law, what do you think that does? Let me just reiterate that question. Do you think that puts in an interference of domestic politics, or do you think that would strengthen domestic politics? Let's carry on. He continues to quote, "This proposal goes against the rule of law," and that is completely and utterly true. How can one form of unelected form of government, because I wouldn't call them an actual government, be able to dictate to a sovereign nation that has a mandate from the peoples that it governs to do a specific thing, be sanctioned to high heaven, to be browbeaten and strong-armed into doing what the unelected government wants them to do? How is that not against the rule of law? Said Atamas Dietsi, and again I'm sorry. An MEP from Hungary's ruling, again I'm not going to be able to say that, so I'm just going to move on, which is part of the EPP. So, MEPs from across the political spectrum raise concerns that if the new mechanism is used to slash funding to member states, it would be difficult for the EU to ensure that end beneficiaries like students and researchers are not harmed. In other words, this will actually go against the human rights of the citizenry to punish political ideas that are different to theirs. Simple. Formally, the EPP supports the proposal, but its MEPs were split, with 139 voting in favour for the proposal, 24 against, and 15 abstaining, and 40 not voting at all. Yay! Democracy at its best, having unelected people voting on what other countries are going to be doing. Amazing. So the EPP members voting against the proposal were MEPs from Hungary, as well as Hungarian-speaking MEPs from Romania, several EPP MEPs from Croatia, Slovenia and Slovakia also voted against. In other words, the countries that were oppressed by a communist socialist regime are noticing that maybe it's not a great idea to take away the sovereignty of the nation by taking away its funding. Maybe it's a form of don't know, social engineering into believing what I believe. Maybe that's what it is. Could be. I don't know. A member of France, Les Republicans, Brice Hortefeux, and again, sorry about that, was the sole MEP from a Western European mainstream party to vote against the proposal. This is why the West is failing. How can you not see that this is against the forms of democracy? Just because it's not directed towards you at this moment in time does not mean that it will not be used against you. Once the law is in place, do not think that it will only be used for the people it was designed for. Look at history, that's not the way that shit works. So, Manfred Weber, the leader of the EPP group in the European Parliament and the party's candidate to be the next president of the European Commission, did not cast a vote. No, of course not. Because, it's undemocratic. Within the centre-left Socialist and Democrats group, SND, there was a similar East-West divide. You mean the people that are actually been in socialist countries were voting against the idea of social engineering, and the countries that want to hold on to power, the ones that want to force power onto people they perceive below them and with the wrong ideas, are the ones that are voting against the forms of democracy and freedom. I would never have guessed. Gosh golly. Just ridiculous. A total of 18 S&D members voted against the proposal. 10 of them were Romanian MEPs from the ruling Social Democrats, 2 were Backs from the ruling Samir Party, 3 were from the Belgian Socialist Party, sorry I'm really not great at reading, and 3 were members of the Czech Social Democratic Party. Amazing how all of those countries were under the rule of a socialist dictatorship or communist dictatorship, depending on your ideology and speaking to who. It's amazing that they were against this. Amazing. It's almost like they've seen it before. Amazing. Sorry, Jessica Peterson, but I had to take that away from you. Amazing. In the alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, the ALDE, only 2 MEPs voted against the proposal, one from Romania, one from Estonia. Again, there's a pattern emerging. People that have lived under a socialistic or communistic dictatorship rule are now looking and thinking, fuck, what have we done? So, MEPs from Eurosceptic groups, including British MEPs like Nigel Farage, overwhelmingly voted against the proposal. Doesn't that mean that he's a Western... Anyway, it might just be because of the group that's there. Maybe, I don't know. The battle over the measure will take place among member governments in the Council of the EU, with Warsaw, Budapest and other capitals having already signalled reservation or outright opposition. Again, countries that this is going to affect disproportionately are against it because they see it as an attack against their rule of law, against their sovereignty, which, remember now, the European Union is democratic. Among the proposal's main opponents are the governments of France, Finland and the Netherlands, as well as influential members of the European Commission. Interesting. We should have had such an instrument earlier. An instrument of being able to control the sovereignty and political ideas of particular nations to force them to be in line with your thinking. That sounds familiar to a particular group of people that come out of Germany around about 1938-39. Interesting, just saying. European Commissioner for Budget, Gunther Oettinger, told MPs ahead of the votes. Yes. So, coming up to the last little bits. In a nod to concerns from the legal service of the Council and some member governments that the proposal improperly replicates the bloc's Article 7 rule of law sanctioning mechanism, the Commissioner argued that the current definition of the scope of the proposal provides for a proper balance between the budget and other aspects of the union mechanism. For example, Article 7 of our treaty. So, again, in other words, most people are trying to say that there is already a rule of law in this, which is under the Article 7 rule of law, and the sanctioning mechanism that allows them to be able to sanction people for not, again, which, believe it or not, the Polish government have been under heavy sanctions, and so is Hungary for not accepting open borders towards migrants at this moment in time. But they want to take it a step further. They want to take it so it's directly stopping the funding that is going into those countries. Now we get roughly, I think it's 13.9 billion that we pump into the EU separately, because we're a major contributor. And then we get 5 billion back as funding from the EU, which, whatever on that one. But that's because we're a massive net contributor. Where you have somebody like Holland, or whether you have somebody like Poland, or whether you have somebody like Hungary or Romania or other Eastern Bloc countries, they actually get more money back from what they put into the European Union. So they actually get more funding for being part of the European Union than they do for not being part of it. As, you know, an incitement to be able to make sure that you stay in the club, so to speak. Now, with the fact of them being able to tie this directly to the rule of law, the government themselves, if they were to say opposed to the way of immigration as they are now, would be that they would still have to pay their form of club membership to the EU, but under this law would be under no jurisdiction or no guidance of law to receive any funding back for that. In other words, the European Union would be siphoning money off of a country and not giving any money back to fund them, even though it's part of their agreement, all because their political ideas are different to theirs. If this is not a form of persecution, if this is not a form of bigotry, if this is not a form of prejudice, I do not understand those terms. So please inform me where you think that this is going to go. Please let me know where you think that this Remainers is democratic. Please let me know on this. And with that being said,